This week, I face the bleak, mullet-filled future of 1990X.
And I've already hit your pressure points to make sure you keep listening. I am Kyle.
And I'm Garrett, and we watch anime.
Garrett, this week we take you to church, to one of the sacred casts of anime history, a show so ubiquitous to the weeb journey that watching it gives you access to all the dankest memes, repeatable one-liners, and terrible mohawks. This week we watch a show so violent, it's more likely you will see blood outside of the body more than you'll see it inside. This week we travel the wastelands in the apocalyptic action martial arts revenge quest known as Fists of the North Star. But before we begin, Garrett, what are new fans going to be expecting from this show?
Everyone out there will feel like they're playing the video game Borderlands and the villain is an acupressure therapist.
Yes, it makes you like worry that when someone tickles you that like some part of you is going to explode. You're like, how does this work? How does this work again?
You're dead and you don't even know it yet.
So, Garrett, once again, we were talking about the show Fists of the North Star. Before we get into the nuts and the bolts of what the show is, I gotta say, this show is an important milestone for you for several reasons. One is it's like the O-est of OGs. It's like, you'll see references to it now. From now on, when you go watch like anime that's comedy-based, someone's going to make a Fist of the North Star reference, and now you'll get it. So I'm glad you're part of this cadre of anime fans now that will get that inside joke.
Happy to be a member of the club.
Yes, exactly. And we were talking beforehand, and you said you kind of like this show. Is that still the case here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The show's absolutely ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous.
Everything that it does, it gets a pass because the first person to do anything gets a pass.
Right.
All copiers, everyone down the line who's just repeating what's been done before them, they get criticized. But the first people there, I mean, this was highly entertaining. It was silly. It was action-packed. You know what it was? In the same way that we all know that, like, Kickboxer and Bloodsport and all these 80s action movies, Commando, we know that they're qualitatively they're terrible, but entertaining, immense.
Right. It's kind of like the G.I. Joe animation, you know? Like you watch it now, you're like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen in my entire life, but you say a world without G.I. Joes is not a world I want to live in. So is the case with Fist of the North Star. Right. So once again, this show is called Hotoku no Ken in Japanese. It's called Fist of the North Star. The manga came out in 1983, and the anime came out in 1984. So this is the oldest show that we've talked about so far. It's important because it came out at the same time as a really important property, which is me. Meaning I am as old as the anime for Fist of the North Star. So that kind of gives you an idea of the age of this thing.
Right.
Also, where this was kind of genesis out of was that the author Tetsuo Hara has stated that he came up with the idea because the editor of his magazine said that he wanted to draw a manga about a martial artist who destroys his opponents by striking their acupressure points. And so it seems like he took one-to-one notes pretty seriously.
I think that is a blatant lie. This artist was sitting at home. He was watching Mad Max, and then he looked at the Bruce Lee poster on his wall and the Twisted Sister album that was playing in the background, and he was like, huh? Huh? Huh?
It was like a stew. He's like, oh, I can do something with this. Yeah, I would say the 80s was a time in which Japan bit off of a lot of intellectual properties, because at that time it was a lot harder to sue someone overseas. Like, imagine going like there's a lot of video games with like straight up Spider-Man and Batman in it, and like, and Japan just basically saying, come at me, bro. Like, what you gonna do about it?
Even reverse it and go to 93, 94, and the Lion King ripped off of the Japanese anime with the White Lion.
So it's always like a little bit of like a come at me, bro, like I dare you to. And that time they were a little bit more brazen. It was the Reagan era, you know, which is much the Mad Max of our time.
Copyrights be damned.
So this show is crazy popular. It's legendary. And a lot of shows, as you mentioned, reference it. He says the first of its kind, but like that's an understatement to say the least. Like the idea of the OP character that is doing these things for righteousness and is, helping the little man, that kind of shonen style really comes off from this show. It's like it directly grows from this tree.
That's true. However, the one thing that this character lacks is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, as the shonen characters have evolved, even with like Monkey D. Luffy and stuff,
right?
There's a reluctance to use their powers unless they really, really have to.
Correct.
And even then, it's only in the name of good. This guy's like, I'm doing good. Boom. No, I need to do more good. Boom, boom, boom.
And to say one-dimensional is Ken's character doesn't give a lot of credence to how one-dimensional is. Like, imagine just like a man who makes this face all the time, like he smelled rank
stuff. He has caterpillars for eyebrows.
Yeah, and just walks around with these beefy arms and just like uppercuts everybody he sees.
And no lower body to speak of. Skipped every leg day.
Yes, the tiniest of shoes. Big body, tiniest of shoes. Right. So another thing to know about this show is that the name is actually Hokuto no Ken. Actually means Fist of the Big Dipper. But people thought that was really stupid sounding in English, so they called it Fist of the North Star. So it was a little bit of a misnomer, because obviously if you look at his chest, there's literally like 50-cent style bullet holes all around his chest.
Right.
From a finger, essentially. And it makes sense that it's called that, but yeah.
So do you want me to drop a little bit of sort of background, what world we're being dropped into?
Yeah, let's just break down the setting, and then we'll go into like the main nuances. But what's this show generally about? Because here's the thing. This show is not a lot to understand. That's the one thing. Like, Garrett's job this week is super easy because there's not a lot to explain with this. In fact, when I watched it this week, I was like, oh my God, this is so crazy. It is like A, B, C, repeat. A, B, C, repeat. It was very formulaic.
Right. There's no nuance.
So,
no
Garrett,
nuance.
Just give us a setting so we can try to stretch this thing out a little bit. So, yeah.
So as Kyle mentioned, it was written in 83 and it was written in 84. So we're at like the height of the Cold War, right?
Right.
So everyone's biggest fear is an all-out nuclear assault and turning the world into a wasteland. And in the opening, I joked about the year 1990X, and that's because in the beginning of every episode, it has 1990X across it. And I'm sure they were just alluding to, hey, 10, 15 years in the future, this is the nuclear barren wasteland that we could all be living in. All right. And so much as you've seen it in any other post-apocalyptic world, resources are scarce. People have become nomads, gangs. They huddle in communities trying to survive together. And you've got this lead character, Ken, who is traversing this world, doing good, but also bringing a lot of crap with him everywhere he goes. And at least for the first 4 episodes, he keeps running into these gangs that he has to defeat, and they're all playing card related. There was Spade, Diamond and Club, and Heart. And I started thinking, you better come up with a new shtick because you're going to run out of, like, baddies.
There's only 52 cards in the deck, and if they all explode, you got to come up with a new game. Try Parcheesi or something like that.
Right. And so this character, Ken, as Kyle mentioned, he's very just, and he wants to do the right thing, and there's a few instances that we might get into that explain that. But his key power is that he's pretty much invincible. He understands, I think he says something like 300 pressure points all over your body. So while he is like, you think he's spin kicking you, he's actually like flicking your temple, and it sets off a timer in your body in which your head explodes in 10 seconds.
I honestly, Garrett, have to get your initial take. I told you this show, Fist of the North Star, right?
Yep.
It sounds really like early Japanese, like, trying to sound badass for 1980s. When you saw someone's head legit explode in the first episode, what ran through your head? Because I know.
Well, I didn't understand. Like, they were like mutating because the skull like melts out of shape.
I
do not want to accidentally hit one of these pressure points on myself. But I did, from an animation standpoint, I do like you see the head shift, and then in order to not be too graphic, they go to a two-tone screen, like an outline in red, and you see it, but you don't really see it. And I like that effect. And a lot of anime have done it since then, at least that we've watched, but I like it.
Yeah. So this is something like I always liken to, because I know I was going to hit this wall with you eventually, Garrett, of like, imagine being a film buff, right? And you're like a film school student, and someone like forces you to watch something like French and avant-garde from like the 1940s, and you're like, to a modern person's palate, like you watched a show that came out in 2020 last week that is like, has computer generated graphics, like everything's crisp and clean, the colors are very focused. And then I brought you to this show, which is not. In fact, I saw multiple cases in which the same guy got killed like 3 times over the course of 4 episodes because they just didn't want to make another person getting their head bashed in. And it was interesting because I'm like, I want Garrett to get it. I want him to know how long ago like this kind of stuff was. The audio's very janky. Like the music is weird.
But you and I are in the same audience. You've got me by 9 months or a year or however long you've got me age-wise, but we are still of that generation where you touched on it before. We watched G.I. Joe. Was it great animation? No. We watched He-Man and She-Ra. Was it great? No. Voltron, stuff like that. Thundercats. This was not the pinnacle of animation, but we still loved the heck out of it. Transformers, all of it. So I can go back and I can still see that. Now, you want to talk to someone who was born in the year 2000 and they're on this journey with you, but they're like, it's not Pixar? All I know is Pixar.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
so, but like, there's certain things that I noticed that I was like, you can tell those either cheaply made or is like, so for example, it really sounds like the music was played through a cassette player. Like it had that like when a cassette tape starts up, and it's slow going out the gate, and it sounds like someone like hit the whammy bar and it was like
legit. I loved it. I thought the soundtrack was terrific.
It was kind of like Kill Bill did that intentionally, where they had like the really old, like scratchy sounding audio. Right. The next thing I noticed is that the vocals in this show sounded like someone was talking into a paper towel roll. It was like a lot of that, and I was like, I hope I hope Garrett doesn't get turned off by that. And the third thing that I really, 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 really loved was anytime someone's body exploded and blood was flying everywhere, they used like a rain stick sound animation to hear the blood trickling. It was like, that guy that does movies in like Hollywood that still does like punches bones, they like hit celery and they wait for the moment to hit. And someone's like sitting there waiting for the guy's blood to fall, and he's like, hit the rain stick. I was like, oh man, this guy's got blood made out of like BBs. Oh. It's so freaking awesome. So
what's so funny is are we 30? This is our 36th episode?
This is 35. Yep.
35. Okay, 35. Not every, but in at least 20 to 25 other episodes, all of which followed this in timeline, I saw something that they do in this show.
Right, exactly. It is. It's also like, it shows you how much the character development of anime has grown and gotten so advanced now. Because back then, and once again, for those of you who don't watch wrestling, I know Garrett and I make a lot of WWE wrestlings shows. This very much followed like the 80s version of WWE wrestling. Like
Ken Warrior.
Exactly. Ken Shiro is Ultimate Warrior. He is the guy that you hear, his theme song's very loud, like dun, 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 and he just runs full speed into the ring. And then like he comes in and he shakes it, and then he does like air bench presses. He gives the guy a pancake, and then he jumps on him for the 3 in like a minute and a half, and then he runs out pounding his chest, and that's what he does. And to our untrained palates, that was great. To our untrained palates, that was amazing, and I can imagine it's still the future with Kenshiro.
It was a time where and people still do this, but all of these baddies, I mean, they're all these hyper muscular, greased up, like it must be a generation of us that just think that like gallon of water drinking sweaty dudes in the gym are the pinnacle of like greatness, you know?
Right, like, you could tell like baby oil was the first thing to go in the post-apocalyptic world because these men were shiny and
Also,
muscled up.
I do have a question. So the show's in a post-apocalyptic world, and
Right.
I get that these roving bands of like gangs are like menacing and stealing other people's stuff, but everyone in the gang is so well formed and muscular, and I just don't know where they're getting the protein.
So let's run through because I feel it's important to note that the baddies in this show are all kind of the same. It's like watching 300, right? Like everybody's the same person multiplied over and over again. So
if you had an action,
if you and I wanted to be a post-apocalyptic bad guy in the Kenshiro Fist of the North Star universe, Garrett, let's talk through the uniform. The first thing is shirts, non-existent. No one wears a shirt in this world.
Shoulder pads?
Shoulder
Absolutely.
pads. Right, and you have to have one lone strap that either goes once over diagonally across the chest or twice. It's got to look very Conan the Barbarian style, right? Third thing is you have to have a mohawk.
What else is going to hold your...
Yeah, go ahead, Gary. Yeah, what else is going to hold?
I was going to say, I mean, what else is... You need a utility belt in order which to hold your utility items, I suppose.
Right, because in this world, like, cars exist, but people are still using battle axes as their main form of weaponry.
Yep.
So it's very, like, Golden Axe style of weaponry. Third thing is you have to have a multicolored mohawk. That's the next thing. You have to have a mohawk. Like, people in this world just, like, we got a style, man. I want everybody to know that we're the bad guy. Everybody's going to have a mohawk. And I also feel this helped with the expansion of skulls that happens in the animation. I think it's intentional just to get that going.
Well, and unless everyone has a funky hairstyle like a mohawk, unless you're Ken or you're King, who's like Jared the Goblin King from Labyrinth.
That man, the main baddie in like the first half of this first season does look like he is the most mullety guy. He looks like Richard Marx, you know, like that's what I think he looks like. Like that style, like huge bangs, gigantic mullet. It was.
I feel like if they had come out with action figures for the baddies in the show, what they could have done is they could have just had one figure, but you get to buy these expansion packs that have a different hair piece, a different shoulder piece, and like a different accessory weapon.
Yeah,
like that.
Oh my god,
that's all you need.
Yeah, I mean it's a world in which like you're in a desert for the most part in this world. You would think you'd want to cover a little bit more. Like there's a reason why like people in Saudi Arabia.
Sunburn.
There's a reason why people in Saudi Arabia don't walk around with their abs out all day. It's like, and so another thing that's crazy about the show is the Kenshiro, why he's doing what he does. We said he has a moral, he's very moral when it comes to his actions. He wants to do right. He wants to save the people. But this really is more of a revenge quest than anything else like that. So as Garrett alluded to, we meet the like super dandy character Shin, he's the Fist of the South Star.
Right.
So they're like mortal enemies, but really it all comes down to a chick. A woman is what makes everything turn. So Garrett talks through that.
Right. So
what's her name again?
Ken Fist of the North Star keeps having these like Oasis like hallucinations in the forest. It's not in the forest, in the desert.
Yes.
And he's constantly seeking out this character Yuria.
Yeah.
And he's just like he just mumbles her name all the time.
With that same like stink face, just like upturned nose, the nostrils flaring, right.
Right. And in true like princess fashion, I imagine she's under some sort of capture with Jared the Goblin King, the Fist of the South Star, and he has her in his palace, and he's trying to like buy her jewels, or not buy her jewels because jewels don't mean anything, but he's trying to give her jewels that he has clearly had slaves procure and then killed.
Correct.
And she's like, I don't want no blood diamond.
But for some reason, she now has gray hair. So the stress of living with this man is so bad. All she does all day is play the harp and have gray hair. And our boy Shin is just not getting it.
Also, in a statement of quality, I got a little confused because in the opening sequence of this show, They show one of the gangs attack this Jeep going across the landscape that has like a couple in it. And the girl who's in the Jeep that they kill, it's like the same animated face as Yuria. Right. So I was like, oh, is this the same girl? No, I don't think so. I think they just don't have that much skill.
And so one we learned about is that Ken got his girls taken, but also got kind of beaten up by Shin. And so Shin, what he did was he decided to, poke him aggressively and violently through the chest, and that's what got him his scars. As he gave he gave him he poked those holes in his chest, and those last 4 stars are his fingers, because that's what you can do in Fist of the North Star. You don't break a finger. They're just like, people's skin is just butter in this world,
right?
And so one thing we know about Kenshiro is as well is that the Fist of the North Star has one successor. He's the only person who can do it. It also gives you 100% of your latent power. So that's the idea. Apparently, it also makes you able to reform clothing after you rip it, because you got so jacked you screamed. This man's shirt explodes every episode, and for some reason he has enough of it in his shirt budget to reattach it. Like when he's really steamed, he just takes off that blue jacket and lets that shirt go like Hulk.
It reminded me of like this episode of Archer where he has like a closet just filled with black turtlenecs. Yeah. And it's just like, yep, I just keep going to the same well with the same thing. His power up is so ridiculous. He gets angry. He hulks out. He
really hulks out.
What he does. And his muscles just expand. And I loved it when one of the baddies, Heart Sama, looks at him and goes, "You got a weird body."
Negging you, bro. So like that's and then so another thing that gets crazy is that if I saw someone who was able to do very simple moves on me and make my head explode or my body rupture or to like take over my body, make me kill myself.
Right.
I wouldn't be my first instinct wouldn't be like, "You bastard," and run full speed at him to be the second person that would happen to.
Right.
But these baddies, on top of wearing the same uniform, just never learn. And so it's a lot of like just fodder getting thrown at him
it's like the putties in Power Rangers. The body count doesn't matter.
Yeah. You think they cover the Z, and it was so vulnerable. They would just like stop blocking that. And so he goes through this world trying to get to Shin, but then he bumps into these 2 annoying characters. A girl who can't speak until he like literally like thumbs her in the neck to make her feel better.
Right. And I love it. He goes, "She now has the power to speak, but it's her decision."
Right. And then we get the annoying, like, character, like, wipes his nose like this all the time. The classic, like, brat character. I don't care about these characters. In fact, Garrett, I told you could speed through this. Like, anytime they were on, nothing important was happening with them, so you could easily skip. I literally just was like, jump between when Ken sees the baddie, kills the baddie, and then walks away. Right? That's the only time.
All right. I would agree when it came to Lynn, who was the young girl who tags along. But the other character whose name I don't remember, I thought there was...
His name is Bat.
Bat. I thought there was some cool thing, like some funny things when he has to get into the base camp to steal rice, and he gives him like his crappy car to get around him and stuff like that. Although I don't know, he has this snake charmer effect with his harmonica.
By the way, none of these shows really matter because they're really watch, rinse, repeat. But the rice episode is one I did want to give a second to. So there's this old man who gets beaten up by some your run-of-the-mill marauders, and one of which is Diamond, who's the boss of this group. And you get Kenshiro is like this rice really matters, and I want to make sure he gets. And the guy's like, "I just want to plant it for the future. Why eat it now when you can plant it for the future?" And like he went to this whole thing, and the guy just to like get this rice in the ground for the future gets straight up murdered. And so Ken, he's dead at the end of this episode. And Ken, I guess to like make him feel better, dumps the rice on his grave. And I'm like, plant it! The man has to do one thing. You plant the damn rice. Okay. And he was like, "This is for him, man." And he like pours it for his homie on top of this unsoiled, unturned ground.
That was my second favorite part of that episode.
Yeah.
My favorite part is when he, but and also these guys, I know that their names, Spade,
Right.
Diamond, Club. I know that they're based off of like a deck of cards, but they're also
Right.
like eerily similar to like stripper names.
Yes.
But so Ken and his tag along Bat find this dude getting harassed by marauders, right?
Yeah.
And he beats off Diamond and the marauders, and he puts the guy in the car and brings him to his town. And as they're speeding out of the town, they're going in one direction, and they see the army of baddies coming into the town to kick ass. And instead of saying to Bat, "Hey, dude, turn around the car," he just leaps out and starts running like.
I like the T-1000. I'm like, bro, we can easily do a U-turn on this thing. Like, Ken does not make good choices. Like, if the choice is between murder and not murder, he's going to choose murder. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, like, nothing he does has a really good resolution to it. People are still dead after he leaves. It's like the most one-dimensional character afterwards.
Well, that's why when one of the town elders sees the scar and he says the fist in the North Star, he says all bad things come. And
right.
It's one of those things where like he does well, but he makes so many enemies doing well that he brings bad everywhere he goes.
Right. It's not like the world got better because he's doing his thing. There's just more exploded bodies when he leaves. That's really all it is. So one thing that happens is that you're going to, once again, Kenshiro has left along a series of things that you will now see forever in anime.
Okay.
The first is his famous kind of bite of Bruce Lee, in that when he does things, he goes, when he does his famous 100 strike thing. So now when you see people do that, it's clearly like a reference to Fist of the North Star when that happens.
Right.
The second thing is that, which always, I don't know, makes me laugh when I see this because I have a sick sense of humor, is he gives someone a death countdown, and instead of just like letting the guy die, they legit throw a timer on the bottom so you can watch this dude die in real time. It's like, you will die in 7 seconds. Boop, boop, boop. And I'm like, wow, that's gnarly, homie.
In particular, I love the one death where he like Fonzie elbowed him in the back the way Fonzie would elbow a jukebox. and he does a back bend, and it's because the muscles around his spine are tightening so much that they're going to snap his own spine and kill him.
So this guy's like, oh, like imagine like a contortionist.
And Ken's just like, boom. Hey.
And so that's the second thing is the death counter, the atatatas. And the third thing is the famous words he'll say every episode that people will say in anime too. So now you get why they do. Is "Moi wa mo shinderu," which means you don't even realize you're already dead. Garrett, when you first heard that, did you think that was the most badass line? Because in anime, that is the most famous line.
Well, I chuckled because I envisioned Steven Seagal or Jean-Claude Van Damme muttering it in some 1986 film, you know.
Oh, Garrett, you'll see in a moment. But "Omoi wa mo shinderu" is actually a famous line that you'll hear all the time. They say it now. It's also a meme. Like my favorite was like there's a BattleBot game where like these two BattleBots are about to face, and then you see like the tiniest one like get behind the person and go "Moi wa shinderu" and like destroys the BattleBot in front of him. It was great. So you'll see it in a lot of memes. It's very memeable. And it's a great meme to work with. But you mentioned a gnarly way to die, and a lot of times like I think in 2020, it is also okay to have empathy for these bad guys because the way they die, it's freaking gnarly. And like, you almost feel bad for the person.
Yeah.
Like, so we're going to do what we usually do in these episodes, and we're going to do kind of like a tier list.
Okay.
Here, I'm going to walk you through some of the ones you may have seen and not seen throughout the course of the first 6 to 7 episodes. We're not really ruining anything for you. And we're going to rank it, and you're going to use the tier list system, which is A, B, C, D, but S is the top.
Yeah.
So S, A, B, C, D. And we're going to say, like, if it's a way to go, Garrett, how gnarly is it? That's how we're going to rank it. Okay? So the first move, which he uses kind of a lot, but it's kind of basic, is the Ganzan Ryozan Wa, which is the Rocky Mountain Splitting Wave. Kenshiro knife hand strikes that crushes the victim's skull in the middle and creates a perfect indentation within their skull. So this guy basically has like a butt crack for a head afterwards. he looks like a tuning fork after getting karate chopped in the forehead, and then usually the person their head splits in half in that process. So on our tier list, Garrett, how would you think? How gnarly is that?
It's C. It's pretty basic.
It's pretty basic, right? I would think at that point you'd already be dead. Specifically, if someone breaks your brain, yeah, you probably
right. Little blunt force trauma.
Yeah. Little blunt force trauma. I also think it would be really funny. It's like, you don't already know you're a hot dog, and then he puts a hot dog within the head. That would be the insult to injury, and the guy's like, no! The second one we have is the Hakuretsu Ken, or also known as the 100 Crack Fist. This is his trademark technique. It's the one he's most frequently associated with him. Mm-hmm. It is characterized as a strike of over 100 blows delivered at rapid speed to a designated 708 pressure points on the adversary's body. Each attack is usually accompanied by the shouting, da, 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 da. Person usually explodes almost immediately. So this is, you're standing there, a guy's just basically pinching you several bajillion times, and at the end of it, you explode. How gnarly is that move?
I would say it's a C, but it gets bumped up to a B because of the speed and the machine gun rat-a-tat-tats that he drops on you.
Yeah, I think it's really funny just because the way the villain makes it seem is that it doesn't hurt at all for this to happen to you, right? It's basically you're standing there, a whole person's going just rapidly swinging their fingers in front of you, and you're just like, what's happening? What's happening? All of a sudden you explode. I get you, though. I would say C to B. I'd rank it the because I think it's instant. It's not as gnarly.
Right.
Kind of like the first one. I think you'd be dead instantly.
Right.
The third one is called the Kaikotsuken, or the bone-crushing fist. This is when two fingers go to the forehead, which causes the skeleton to explode from the body. Basically, you hit a pressure point in the brain. It causes your skeleton basically explode out of your body. Your muscles are fine, but the skeleton jumps out, essentially.
Yep. This is absolutely a strong B, soft A. What would make it an A is if his fingers were spread and he said yuck, 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 yuck as he was doing it.
The bones exploded and they stayed animated the whole time. They're like,
bones exploding out of your body is pretty gnarly.
Yeah, this is one of the ones that clearly get the dual tone treatment because it's really tough to look at.
The first two guys, this might have been what he used, but the first two guys in the series that he kills, when their compadres find them, they're on the ground and their rib cages are splayed open.
Yeah.
And one of the guys goes, "Hold on, this one's still breathing." I'm like,
no, and it's just so we can send the message and then have his head explode out of the back of his skull,
right.
Which is wild. The third one is unnamed, but it's the one that you mentioned. So I want you to walk us through this. The one that killed Club.
Right.
Talked about the man getting the elbow in the back, and then the man gets 30 seconds. Talk us through this one, Garrett.
Right. So here's why this is my favorite. Because Ken isn't killing them. Ken is convincing their body to kill them.
Yes. It's let's have a conversation. The body's like, all right.
So he basically elbows you in your kidney, and it causes you to have the most severe back spasm you've ever had in your life.
And imagine you turn into a fortune cookie. That's essentially how I would say.
Right.
You're on your knees and you're back bending so hard.
Right, you're on your knees and you're back bending. And the most beautiful part about it is because there's this 30-second timer on it, Ken gets to monologue.
Yeah. Not facing you, too. He gets to look at the camera the whole time and monologue while you're just going oh, as your back is going further and further back. This is the longest timer, so that's the harshest part about it. That's why I want to give this time. You give this person a lot of time to think because you know you're dying if your back is legit splitting itself backwards in half.
Right.
So
I give it an S.
I give this an S. This is close to my S one because it's got to be gnarly to die in that position. The first thing, it'd be one thing if your head exploded, people get it. But if they find you and you're legit in the opposite direction your body can go,
right?
Hard to look at. It's
speaking of which, there was one fight he was in where I don't know how he got his arms around the bad guy's arms,
right? But
he breaks their elbows backwards.
Yes.
And when the bad guy runs away, his arms are
are flopping around. It's he's the only one that doesn't die from his technique. He's and then he kind of does a Reagan era, go work for your money. That's what he. He did get a job. He gave them this big dude a go work for your money, you freeloader. And the guy's like, So the second one the fourth one we have you haven't seen yet, but I thought it was worth because I thought it was really funny, is called the Soul King Jizaiken, which is the reeling muscle at will fist. This is I think this is the funniest one, and it's an anime only technique. So they're in the story. There's two rival gang leaders that are causing this town to get caught in their bloodshed.
Yeah.
And so in the process, they all gang up on Kenshiro. So Kenshiro hits them in the right thing, and so what it makes their bodies do is walk towards each other. And then hug each other to death. So imagine this guy you hate is right in front of you. And you basically go, oh no! And your arms are walking. You walk slowly to the guy, and you both embrace in this very vicious hug. And you're just like, oh! And their faces are pressed against each other, and their whole top halves explode. I thought that was the gnarliest.
So stupid.
And he goes, and his final quote is, "You were meant for each other." I'm like that. So what do you rate that one, Garrett? This is the hug your enemy to death.
I'm sorry, that's an S as well. That's hilarious.
And it's funny when you see their faces too, because they're like legit hugging so hard that their faces are pressed, so squeezed. They're like, no, I'm hugging each other to death. Oh. And this is the last one, which I think you saw. It's one with the God Army, which is another one of those like disposable armies that you get to kill when you're sick of looking at playing cards. Is he forces someone who uses a whip to, he basically pressure points both of his elbows in the arm, like at a 90-degree angle, but he has the whip wrapped around his neck, and he forces his hands to separate so that the man is literally choking himself to death. What did you think of that one? This one's unnamed, but it is a move.
It's a B.
It's a B?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
But imagine, like, you're just standing there, like, I'm killing myself. Ah!
I get it, but I was not as entertained as the previous two.
as the hugging your enemy to death move?
Right, or the backbend of death.
Yeah. The backbend of death. So, yeah. So this, I love it when I get to say the following words, and I think you and I should probably have an episode just dedicated to this, but Garrett, what if I was to tell you that there was a live-action movie based on this?
I would say that it surely had to be made in a time where the movie is as bad as the anime.
It was actually made 10 years later in 1995. The man who plays Kenshiro is like one of those throwaway karate guys who are like, hey, this guy should star in a movie. His name is Gary Daniels, and they used realistic effects to do the moves and the people exploding. And so normally I would just tell you that this existed and then we'd laugh about it. Yeah. But I thought when I saw this one clip, I thought it was too perfect for us not to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video here. Garrett's going to watch like a 2-minute clip, and then we're going to talk about it afterwards.
All right.
So Garrett, what did you think of the 1995 adaptation of Fist of the North Star?
There is no need for that to exist. Are you going to show the clip in the middle of our episode?
I want to. I just don't want to get DMCA'd.
All right.
Not that I don't know who's out there claiming Fist of the North Star right now, but
Gary Daniels is sitting in his mother's basement somewhere, like.
He's like, I'm such a good karate man, and I know I'm a good actor. I know what I'll do. I'm going to remake
any residuals he can get at this point. He's like, I must have them. I have to admit,
there's some things I respect about this movie. There's some things I respect.
The setting was terrible.
It looks like someone's like college project. That's the first thing I thought about.
Right, and why does it have to sound dubbed over? It's freaking white people. And why do we have to get the white
bad acting?
Why do we have to give the white guy who's yelling all the time a Fu Manchu? Like, that said, the initial punch through the door where the dude's jaw goes sideways, I thought that was cool.
This is what I respected about it, because what is one thing about Fist of the North Star is people explode. It's this body horror on top of anime. So the fact that they use like realistic effects to make this show, to make this movie happen, I want to give them full credit because this movie's budget was $6.8 million. So that is tight. That is a tight budget for a movie.
But $6.8 million in the '90s is a lot more than it is now. But wow.
But to pay on, like, say you're paying like the Thing level of effects, like, think about that. How much that would have cost just to get just the effects alone.
Oh.
I mean, obviously, you know, Gary Daniels is not someone who's like going to break your budget just by doing it.
Someone saw Gary Daniels in a dojo and was like, he's got a strong jawline. We can put him in an action movie. Give him a 5 o'clock shadow. It's all going to work out.
Some things I loved about it. So I do actually appreciate the realistic effects. The second thing was, you and I both laughed at it because we noticed it was, they wanted to show you, we want you to hate these guys not just because they're like essentially going to rape this woman, but because they're kind of like effeminate at the same time. So the first scene of the baddies is the baddie looking straight at the camera, half profile, checking his lipstick in front of the camera at the same time. It's like the gold dust gimmick, trying to get you like, no, he's fruity, I'm going to end him dead, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was him doing the 100 crack style fist had no sound effects whatsoever. It was just like, oh, here it is, like, it's like he literally sounded like he's just like the wind of his hands are moving. That's all you hear. It's just like, and they didn't bother dubbing in anything. What is this show known for? It's the is the actual like martial arts sound. I bet Gary Danielson's range would have included him being able to go at least, right?
Right.
Put that in your resume. But the fact that it was like this guy who is shorter than the guy going like "Hoo!" and making no noise out of it.
Yeah.
Hysterical.
Have they ever remade this anime?
No. Well, they've done multiple seasons of it because it was so famous that they like did more seasons of it with further adventures of Kenshiro.
Yeah.
Because his revenge story gets resolved very quickly.
Oh, okay.
So like he has to kind of keep doing it somehow, and so they brought up like brothers and other Fists of the South Star and other relatives that wanted to be Fists of the North Star but didn't end up being it. Like it's very one dimensional in that way.
Like Feet of the Eastern Shore, like
Wings of the Golden Eagle. Yeah, they did stuff like that over and over again, and it made sense. One thing is that Clint Howard's in this movie. That's another thing.
Oh my God!
I was like, if I'm looking through like the actual like Fist of the North Star movie thing. What was that, Garrett?
The IMDb page.
Yeah, I'm looking at like who's in it. So that's one thing we can also note is that Fist of the North Star has Clint Howard in it. Is there any other big names in it? Oh, Big Van Vader is in this movie. So Vader from WWE is in this movie. That's another one that's in there. And Mario Van Peebles is, I'm assuming, dad. Melvin Van Peebles is in the movie. Downtown Julie Brown is in this movie. So, Garrett, I know for a fact that you and I are probably...
Downtown Julie Brown?
Downtown Julie Brown is in. She's like, oh my God, it's the Fist of the North Star. Wubble, wubble, wubble. So... Oh, Chris Penn's in this movie too! Holy crow! I can't believe Chris Penn's in this movie. Oh, but it was straight to video. It was also like it was not.
Well, you know, it's like an alternate universe Footloose where they were never allowed to dance.
Well, this was the time where Chris Penn got fat and he did Best of the Best, either 1 or 2, and like they're like, well, yeah, let's give Christopher Penn more action karate movies. He can pull those off. So I don't know. So I think you and I think we're going to call our shot now that I think for our 50th anniversary, our 50th full year anniversary, we're going to watch full action remakes of anime.
Okay.
We're going to talk about those. So this will be a nice little change.
Sounds good.
One of them is you and I watching Fist of the North Star movie. I don't know how much it is, Garrett. I apologize for that.
No, it's fine.
So yeah, so the one thing we want to do, because as I said, there's really not a lot to talk about, is that the show is very action oriented. It's very violent. It's got a lot of blood. It's very, it's very one dimensional. The characters. It's very much G.I. Joe, villain of the moment. It's not a lot to do. So knowing what you know about Fist of the North Star, what are some things you think that knowing what you've watched also did it influence? Where do you see the influences now?
Well, we always talk about powering up, and we talk about like Dragon Ball Z, which I've never watched, but you talk about like this week on Dragon Ball Z, oh, and like the powering up, and I mean, Ken powers up every episode. He also the show also has these transition screens from one scene to another, where like lightning goes across the scene, which
the mid card is him going like "Bacha!" and it's very loud. I remember I had to like every time the mid card came in, I had to like pull off my headphones because it was like super loud.
Right. Definitely. I mean, I guess Mad Max kind of started it all with like the post-apocalyptic scene, because you didn't. There's nothing post-apocalyptic before that, because I don't think anyone imagined a world post-nuclear fallout until the Cold
I would
War.
say also putting action movies in deserts to make it easier to draw is a huge like thing from. I know theirs was based on it, but there's like no reason why Dragon Ball Z is in deserts all the time.
Right.
Thing,
yeah, I mean, sand is easier than trees.
Right, exactly. And you can make that, as you said, that like that rock that's just gonna be put just in the right place at the right time so the person can go through it, and then you're all good after that.
Right.
Yeah, and I think another thing that it definitely highlighted was the OP character, the character that is you always know is going to save the day. It kind of because back in the day the main heroes were usually like weak little angel cherubic characters. Like I know I talked about this on other podcasts. It's Astro Boy, who is like a little robot boy that was kind of a big thing. Like they liked cute things here. This was like the first time you had like the muscly character. And then another thing that was really crazy that I read as a fact on the trivia of this is that this was the first time that they saw an anime character cry, a big daddy cry as part of their thing. Because usually it's their reasoning was always very one-dimensional, like, this is for justice, I'm going to kill you, and then not think anything of it. The Kurosawa, like, samurais don't cry when they cut someone open, Like, samurai don't really care about this. So this is the first time someone actually, like, was sad that the world was in a bad shape after he left. So, it's when you see her, like, that was the milestone. Like, it's kind of like hearing, like, the first woman to do a newscast. You're like, okay. But you kind of have to respect it for the time it was in. So,
yeah.
So knowing what know, and knowing how easy it is to watch, because I honestly think you could speed read watch this. It's not something you really have to really pay too much attention to. In fact, you can have like a background for most things. Would you keep watching Fist of the North Star?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah. Certainly through the first season.
Right, and there's a lot of it too. So
yeah, I might get tired of it because, like you said, it's lather, rinse, repeat, A, B, C.
And whenever they do a movie, they also make sure, like, because they have like the thing of the movies that they can do, they do a lot more violent things. Like, instead of it just being someone's head exploding, like the gnarliest stuff. Like there's one where there's a final battle between Kenshiro and the final person, and the whole battle is them just like having leakage of blood just coming out of their body at the same time. Imagine like several sprinklers of blood coming off their body, so they're just like punching each other, but it's just like blood trickling out of them.
They both just pass out because
they're just exsanguinated. So I've seen this before a bunch of times. I know this show pretty well. It's a very fun show. I would say anybody who wants kind of like to learn themselves a little bit about this, get some more experience with what anime was back in the day, but not also be like Thundercatification where it like completely ruins older anime for you. I think this is one that you could do. So we're going to be doing what's called our Weebin Noob Score right now. And the Weebin Noob Score doesn't say whether or not a show is good or not. It's essentially a prioritization or how much we give credence to whether you should watch it right away or whether you should kind of put it away. So I'm going to start with this one. And if I was to say Fist of the North Star, just for its importance alone, I'm going to give it a 9. I think with how easy it is to watch, like if you don't mind watching G.I. Joe and then watching spoofs of G.I. Joe back in the day, if you find that stuff funny, you're going to laugh too. Like, weirdly enough, if you're going to find it comedic for what it was at the time, I would say you should still watch it because it is the Godfather. It is the OG of shonen anime, and for you to really educate yourself on what anime is all about, including like how hard it was for them to get properties out and how like bad it was back in the day in terms of the animation and how far it's come. I think there's a lot to respect about Fist of the North Star for what it was. So definitely watch it. It's on Crunchyroll. It's really easy to watch. You can go through like 2 episodes, put it down. It's not like episodic. It's not like you have to learn a lot. You can fast forward a lot of it too. So what other reason to just laugh at something really old and ridiculous?
Yeah,
so.
absolutely.
Garrett, what do you give it as your noob score for new fans?
I give it a 9 as well, because you can't say you've studied classical music if you haven't studied Mozart, and you can't say that you've studied rap without Kool and the Gang, and you can't say that you know sitcom television without having watched MASH. I mean, these are just like there are just classics upon which so much is based, and this just seems to be one of them. And again, I know I'm the noob here, and eventually I won't be a noob if we keep doing this for a few years. It'll have to be.
We'll have to change the name of the show, or we'll have to revisit
the weeb and the semi-weeb.
Yeah.
But it just seems like it's the bedrock upon so much, upon which an entire genre sits, and so much has come from this that and yeah, like you said, it's also super fun and it's silly.
It's very silly.
And you can't take it seriously. If you want something to be taken seriously, if you want something with like dripping with like quality story, this is not it. This is much like jeans in the 80s. This is held together by string.
Yeah, it's not like you're going to go on the Fist of the North Star page and learn a lot of lore about this show. There's not a lot to take in terms of lore, but you also are going to get, when someone references something like you already know you're already dead or something like that, you'll get the references and stuff like that because it's a really important show.
I feel like that line is something that Quentin Tarantino would absolutely use in his movie.
Sure,
like, have you ever seen Fists of the North Star?
I think this is one of the ones that John Cena has mentioned as one of his favorite animes of all time. And
oh, really?
I can understand it, right? It's very...
Yep.
If you put Kenshiro in jorts, it would make sense. You could easily...
John Cena would be better than...
than Gary Daniels as the official Kenshiro of the...
Right.
And I can't, honestly, just watching that clip alone, I can't wait for us to review that movie, because I laughed so hard watching that movie. And I really want to see how far they took it, because if that's just the 2 minutes of it, I can imagine them really going full earnest about it.
Right. I hope it's not overly long, though. If it stays in like a 90-minute movie, it could be just long enough to be funny. But if they thought that, let's like really drag this out and make it 2+ hours, like there's no way I'm going to be able to hang
Apparently, from what I read on the Wikipedia, it's like the first half. It's basically what we watched. It's basically the first 6, 7, 8 episodes of the first.
Okay.
So it doesn't go too crazy into it. And then I think they were trying to think about maybe putting this into a trilogy too. Like they really wanted this to be something. So
right.
I can't blame them for trying. So Garrett, you don't already know this, but our show's about to end. And Garrett's like, no! And explodes.
You hit my sensu pressure points. My brain came out my ears.
And that's why it's important to hear your thoughts. Have you ever watched Fist of the North Star, especially something as OG as this show? Do you like it for its just quintessential of its timeness? Do you like it for its violence and how ridiculous it is? Or do you respect its action, how much it meant to the genre? I honestly think this is one that you can watch with like special brownies and stuff like that and have a really good time. And so for that, we want to hear your thoughts on that conversation. Make sure that if you want to listen to more of our podcasts, you can follow us on anchor.fm/WanWillPodcast. You can also find us on social media at Instagram at WanWillPodcast, WANWA Podcast, as well as our Twitter at @V_new. But before we close the book on the OG known as Fist of the North Star, Garrett, what are some final thoughts you have on this show?
If you're going to Hulk out, make sure that you have identical uniforms in your car at all times. Because, you never know where you're going to be and what's going to happen, and you'll need to put on an exact same set of clothing to replace it.
The first thing that's going to kill Kenshiro is not a baddie with a battle axe, but exposure. So we're going to be hitting each other's pressure points, screaming that we're already dead, watching people's brains blow out of the back of their skulls. All in all, to wish you all fantastic. See you next week.
Take care, y'all.
どにも聞かんわい。お前はもう死んでいる。何？もうは匠でギゼブ。